Hey everybody, Melissa here, the Unlikely Hiker. I hope everyone's doing really good tonight. So way back in October, I got my hands on the Tensor EC kind of as an early release, and I was very excited to get it out in the field and get some good cold nights on this pad. I was very excited because I had already sold my Thermarest X-Therm like 6 months ago, and I really was all ready to try this pad out, put it through the paces, and see how it did. Unfortunately, Mother Nature kind of had different ideas, and although we did have some temperatures that were around zero, maybe even a little colder, and some in the teens, it ended up being a record warm winter for us here. I'm in upstate New York. So sadly, I think the coldest I ended up getting this pad down to was in the mid to low 20s, and it was kind of in a controlled environment, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So let's just review some of the specs real quick so that we're on the same page with this pad. So the Tensor EC Extreme Condition is an 8.5 R value, claimed R value pad that Nemo came out with last year in their new Tensor line. I ended up getting the regular wide sleeping pad. The regular wide comes in at 1 pound, 6 ounces, or 625 grams. The pack size, it's about the size of a Nalgene, give or take. It has 3.5 inches of thickness, and it's got 40 denier on the bottom, 20 denier on the top. And it does have like the aluminized Mylar film on the inside that's suspended. The suspended Mylar makes it a little bit more quiet than some other pads. So I think the big question everybody wants to know is it as warm as they say? And unfortunately, I just can't give a solid answer. For the times that I used it, and like I said, I got about 20 nights on this pad, it was very warm. I never had an issue, and the sleeping bag that I was using was actually a 35-degree LL Bean sleeping bag. So I didn't really have this paired with anything that went down to really cold temperatures, because I did kind of want to see where this pad was. How warm was it going to be? So let's talk about the controlled environment that I had this pad in. Having 3 days a week off from ski patrol, I thought would be plenty of time to go out in the backcountry. But what I neglected to realize was how exhausted I was going to be after skiing for 40 hours in a work week. So I had to come up with a different plan. And the only other plan I could come up with, since I do sleep in the trailer at the mountain, is I took out the cushions of the trailer and I put in the Nemo Tensor EC. If you know anything about travel trailers, they are drafty. There is no insulation. I did have a hygrometer hanging in the trailer so I could kind of track the temperatures and what the low was. And I think the lowest that I had was about 19 degrees. And it was only 19 degrees for a short amount of time. So I'm going to say mid-20s was the average that I had this pad down into. And yes, there was no breeze coming through except for what was coming underneath the seat. Yeah, so this really was not an ideal situation to use this pad in. In the controlled situation that I had it in, and by the way, I did not turn the heat on in the trailer. And this pad performed outstanding in these circumstances. Again, I wasn't able to get this pad out into the real world, into my winter tent, which is a Big Agnes copper spur. I think it's a 3+ season tent. It's kind of like an expedition type tent with very little mesh. And in my experience, side note, using that tent, very few drafts in that tent. It does really well because it doesn't have very much mesh, and the windows that do have mesh, you can zip them closed to prevent any of that draft from coming through. I would say with absolute confidence that into the 20s, this sleeping pad would in fact perform outstanding. Generally speaking, when I've gone camping in the winter, I do put one of the Thermarest Z-Fold sleeping pads down, because usually where I'm camping, it could get as cold as -20, and that's just the air temperature. So I did not have any reason to do that, nor did I. So moving aside from that, which really is the big question, and again, I'm going to state emphatically, into the 20s, that pad is incredibly warm. Absolutely incredibly warm, hands down. Is it going to be as warm at -20? I don't know. And frankly, I would have another closed cell foam pad under it anyway. So take that with a grain of salt. If you do a lot of Arctic style negative temperature camping, either test this out ahead of time or they do make warmer pads. So maybe go with one of those if your life is going to depend on it. Mine did not, but this pad did perform very well. So let's move on to comfort. I found this pad to be incredibly comfortable. It's not quite as comfortable as my Big Agnes Rapide SL. And I think that there's one main reason for me personally where the Big Agnes is just a little bit more comfortable. The Big Agnes, the sides of that pad are taller and then the middle is smaller. So I think it's 4 inches or 4.5 inches on the outside and then 3.5 in the center. So it kind of cradles you in. And for me, that keeps me on the pad. It keeps me super comfortable and I'm very happy with it. And I'm saving about 4 ounces because I'm using a short, regular pad for the Big Agnes Rapide. For comfort, I would have to say it is the second most comfortable pad I personally have ever slept on. As far as packability, it does pack down to about the size of a Nalgene, not too bad. And with a weight of 1 pound, 6 ounces, especially if you're going to be using this as a dedicated winter pad, I think that that's really a fantastic weight. And like I said earlier, it does have 40 denier fabric on the bottom, 20 denier on the top. It is very soft. It's very comfortable to lay on. The insulation in this pad, from my understanding, is it's suspended in there, and that's the aluminized film. So I didn't notice any cold spots, but I did make sure to kind of like shake it a little bit before I put it down at night. I would deflate it in the morning just because I didn't want the dog laying on it and popping it. So I would deflate it and then reinflate it and kind of shake it a little bit before putting it down onto the seat inside of the trailer. So as a result, I think from like making sure I was shaking it, making sure that those layers were not stuck together, that I didn't have any cold spots. Now, one of the sides of the sleeping pad does hit the exterior wall of the trailer, and that wall does in fact get very cold because if I'm laying up against it and let's say my leg is touching it through the sleeping bag, my leg will start to get very cold. And I did not experience any cold from underneath while using this pad. The only cold I felt was through my sleeping bag. So take that as you will. It also is a very quiet pad. It really doesn't make much noise. It doesn't sound like a highly insulated pad when you're sleeping on it. Included with the sleeping pad, you get the Vortex pump sack, which is excellent. It works very, very well. It snaps into place on the pad. You can just gather some air in there. You could blow into it if you want, and then you just roll it in. A few bagfuls later, and your sleeping pad is inflated. This sleeping pad also does come with a lifetime warranty from Nemo. As far as insulating factors that go into this sleeping pad, it has 4 layers of Apex baffle design, which suspends the insulation, and 4 aluminized sheets. Now, it's really hard for me to say if this was warmer than my X-Therm since I got rid of it like 6 months ago. I always use my Thermarest X-Therm with the Z-fold pad underneath for extra warmth just because of the extreme environments that I was sleeping in, and it was warm. When I paired that with my -20-degree bag, I was always very toasty. I wouldn't expect anything different from this pad, to be very honest. However, again, I cannot say that definitively because I just was not able to experience cold enough temperatures this winter. Overall, I definitely enjoyed sleeping on this sleeping pad. It's wide enough, it's long enough, it's warm enough, it's comfortable enough, it's quiet enough. It checks all the boxes. So who is this pad for? Is this pad for you? It's probably overkill for most people. If you're an insanely cold sleeper, then maybe this pad is for you. But unless you're going out in the winter, in the snow, you're sleeping on the snow, I think that this pad is overkill for most people. I think that most people would be fine with the Tensor All Season if you kind of wanted a do everything pad. And I'm pretty sure that that pad, if it's comparable to the older Nemo that I have, if you put a closed cell foam pad under that, it's probably going to get you down into the 30s. So if that's your target for a sleeping pad, I would stop there. And then there's an ultralight version, which has even less insulation. And if you live in a warmer climate, like not in the Northeast or not in the North in general, maybe that one is for you. You know, if you're some of my friends that live down south, you don't need the Tensor EC. It is just going to be overkill for most people. But if you do require something like that, I think it might be worth it to look at it. In my opinion, I would definitely test this out before taking it out onto the trail, because I just don't know. I can't say for certain, and I'm not sure anybody can at this point. So anyway, sorry that I wasn't able to get this out a little bit more and get some of those really cold temperatures. I just did not anticipate being so utterly exhausted from skiing 40 hours a week. I should have known better on that. But I did do the best I could with what I had available, and I was happy with it. Would I personally trust this to take it out into very cold temperatures? Yes. Would I think long and hard before taking this out down to -20? Yes. I would want to make sure I'm not that far from my car. So if I get cold and I feel like I have to evacuate in the middle of the night, I would do that. But down to 0, I think that this pad absolutely is going to do a great job. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I would love to have you. You guys take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.